The sky over New York turned dark at exactly 3 in the afternoon, and it was not because of clouds or storms or anything that humanity had ever seen before. Admiral Chen Weilin stood on the observation deck of the United Nations building and watched as the massive shadow grew larger and larger above the city. Her hands remained steady, but her heart beat faster than it had in 20 years of military service. The ship that descended through the atmosphere was not just big, it was impossible. It stretched across the horizon like a floating mountain made of gold and crystal and metals that shimmered in colors that had no names in any human language. "How large is it?" asked General Morrison, who stood beside her with his mouth hanging open in shock. "Sensors say it is 400 kilometers long," replied a young officer whose voice trembled as she read from her tablet. "There are more of them coming through. We count 17 ships in total." Chen said nothing as she watched the cathedral ship settle into position above the Atlantic Ocean. She had spent her entire career preparing for the possibility of first contact, but nothing could have prepared anyone for this moment. Within hours, every television and computer and phone screen on Earth displayed the same image. A tall figure with pale blue skin and 4 arms, dressed in robes that seemed to be made of woven light itself. The being's face was ancient and kind, with large dark eyes that held something like tears. "People of Earth," the being spoke, and somehow every human heard the words in their own language. "I am High Arbiter Selûn of the Velkorath Dominion, and I bring you news that will change everything you have ever known about your place in this universe." The world held its breath. "For 200,000 years, my people have searched the stars for the one spoken of in our most sacred texts," Selûn continued. "We have visited 10,000 worlds and studied millions of species, always looking for the chosen ones who would inherit the galaxy and lead all life toward transcendence." Chen watched as billions of people around the world stopped whatever they were doing to listen. Traffic came to a halt, factories went silent, and even wars paused as soldiers on both sides stared at their screens. The prophecy describes a species born under a yellow sun, on the 3rd world from their star, who would rise from nothing to reach beyond their own sky, the Arbiter said with growing emotion in his voice. "A species that would know suffering and joy, war and peace, hatred and love, and through all of this would never stop reaching for something greater." Selûn spread all 4 of his arms wide, and his ancient face broke into a smile of pure joy. "You are the chosen ones," he announced. "We have found you at last, and we have come to offer you your birthright, technology beyond your dreams, knowledge gathered across millennia, and a place at the center of galactic civilization." The response from humanity was immediate and overwhelming. People wept in the streets, celebrations erupted in every city, and religious leaders of every faith struggled to understand what this meant for their beliefs. But Admiral Chen did not celebrate. She turned away from the window and walked quickly to her private office, where her most trusted officers had already gathered. These were men and women she had known for years, people who thought the way she did and asked the questions that others were too excited or too afraid to ask. "Tell me about the translation," Chen said as she sat down at her desk. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the fleet's head linguist, pulled up a holographic display that showed complex alien symbols alongside their English translations. "The Velkorath language is beautiful and incredibly precise," Tanaka said. "Every word has layers of meaning that connect to other words in ways that take years to fully understand." "And the word they use for chosen?" Chen asked. Tanaka hesitated. "That is where things become complicated. The word is Velthrani, and it does translate to chosen or selected or blessed, but the root of the word, Velthra, has another meaning that the automatic translators did not catch." "What meaning?" "It shares linguistic origins with their word for livestock," Tanaka said quietly. "Or more precisely, their word for animals that are raised with love and care before being used for a sacred purpose." The room went very silent. General Morrison leaned forward. "Are you saying they want to eat us?" "No, it is more complex than that," Tanaka replied. "I have been studying fragments of their religious texts that were included in their broadcast data. The Velkorath believe that the highest honor any species can achieve is to be absorbed into their civilization. Literally, their biology allows them to incorporate genetic material from other species, and they see this as offering eternal life." Chen closed her eyes and thought about everything she had seen. The massive ships, the incredible technology, the tears of joy on the Arbiter's ancient face. "They are not lying to us," she said. "They genuinely believe they are giving us a gift." "That makes it worse," said Colonel Park, her intelligence chief. "An enemy who wants to destroy you is simple to understand. An enemy who wants to love you to death is something else entirely." Over the next few days, the Velkorath continued their displays of generosity. They shared medical technology that could cure every disease known to humanity. They offered clean energy systems that could end pollution forever, and they presented agricultural techniques that would eliminate hunger within a year. World leaders met with the Arbiter and came away glowing with excitement. Humanity was special, they said. Humanity had been chosen for greatness. Chen watched it all with growing dread in her heart. She assembled a secret team of scientists, linguists, and intelligence officers from nations that had been rivals just weeks before. American and Chinese, Russian and Indian, Israeli and Iranian, all of them united by a simple understanding that something was very wrong with this gift from the stars. They worked in bunkers deep underground, away from the Velkorath sensors that had begun to spread across the planet like a net made of kindness. And slowly, piece by piece, they began to uncover the truth. The Velkorath Dominion had existed for 200,000 years, but their biology was failing. Each generation grew weaker, their minds less sharp, their bodies less capable. The only thing that had kept them alive was the absorption of other species, taking the best traits from each chosen race and incorporating them into Velkorath genetics. They had done this 17 times before. 17 species had been visited, honored, elevated, and loved. 17 species had been given technology and knowledge and every kindness the Velkorath could offer, and 17 species no longer existed anywhere in the galaxy. The process took 3 generations to complete, and once it began, it could not be stopped. The Ascension ceremony was not a celebration, it was the beginning of the end. Chen stood alone in her office late one night, looking up at the stars that she had dreamed of reaching since she was a little girl. "We are not livestock," she whispered to the darkness. "We are not a gift to be given or a resource to be harvested. We are humanity, and we choose our own fate." She turned to her desk and began to write the first draft of a plan that would either save her species or destroy it, a plan she called Operation Prometheus. The Velkorath had searched for 200,000 years for the perfect chosen ones, and they had finally found them. But they had made one terrible mistake in their calculations. They had chosen humanity, a species that had never in its entire history accepted someone else deciding its destiny. 6 months had passed since the Velkorath arrived, and Earth had become a paradise that no human had ever dared to imagine. Cancer was gone, eliminated by a simple injection that took less than a minute to administer. Heart disease, diabetes, and every other illness that had plagued humanity for thousands of years simply ceased to exist. People who had been told they would die within months now ran marathons and climbed mountains, and held their grandchildren with hands that no longer trembled. The oceans were clean for the first time in 2 centuries. The air in every city was fresh and pure. Forests grew back almost overnight as Velkorath environmental technology repaired damage that humans had thought was permanent. And everywhere you looked, the people of Earth were happy, so incredibly, wonderfully happy. Admiral Chen, watched a news broadcast showing crowds in Paris celebrating the 1-month anniversary of the day of choosing. And she felt her stomach turn with a mixture of guilt and determination. "They have no idea," said Dr. Tanaka, who sat beside her in the underground bunker that had become the headquarters of the resistance. "How can we tell them that all of this is just preparation for slaughter?" "Not slaughter," Chen corrected her. "That is what makes this so difficult to fight. The Velkorath do not see themselves as murderers. They see themselves as priests offering the highest sacrament." Colonel Park entered the room with a tablet in his hands and a grim expression on his face. "We have completed the analysis of the stolen data. The timeline is confirmed." Chen turned to face him. "How long do we have?" "The ascension ceremony will begin in 18 months, Park replied. "After that, the process takes 3 generations to complete. Our children will be partially absorbed, our grandchildren will be mostly absorbed, and our great-grandchildren will not be human at all. They will be Velkorath." The room fell silent as everyone processed this information. "What exactly happens during the absorption?" asked General Morrison. Dr. Tanaka pulled up a holographic display showing complex biological diagrams. "The Velkorath release a genetic agent into the population through what they call blessing ceremonies. These look like religious rituals, but they are actually sophisticated genetic engineering. The agent slowly rewrites human DNA over multiple generations, keeping the traits the Velkorath want and eliminating everything else." "What do they want from us?" Chen asked. "Our aggression," Tanaka said. "Our creativity, our ability to adapt and survive in hostile conditions, our capacity for both great love and great violence. The Velkorath have become too peaceful, too stable, too predictable. They need our chaos to survive. So they will take our fire and leave us as ashes," Chen said quietly. "They do not see it that way," Tanaka replied. "In their religion, the absorbed species live forever as part of the Velkorath collective consciousness. They genuinely believe they are offering us immortality." Chen stood up and walked to a large map that covered one entire wall of the bunker. It showed Earth and all the positions of Velkorath, advisors, who had embedded themselves in every government, every military, every major institution. "We cannot fight them directly, not yet," she said. "Their technology is too advanced, and most of humanity would oppose us if we tried. They would call us terrorists, enemies of progress, destroyers of paradise." "Then what do we do?" Morrison asked. "We learn," Chen replied. "We study their technology until we understand it better than they do. We find their weaknesses. Every system has weaknesses. And we build in secret while they believe we are grateful and obedient." Over the following months, the resistance grew like roots spreading beneath the soil, invisible on the surface but strong and connected underground. Scientists who had been given Velkorath technology to study instead reverse-engineered it in hidden laboratories. Military officers who served alongside Velkorath advisors carefully noted every detail about their biology, their psychology, and their religious beliefs. Linguists decoded ancient texts and discovered secrets that the Velkorath themselves had forgotten. And slowly, a picture emerged of how the Dominion actually worked. The cathedral ships were not controlled by computers or mechanical systems. They were controlled by the psionic network of the High Arbiter. Selûne's mind was connected to every ship, every weapon, every system in the fleet. Without that connection, the ships would go dark and helpless. "That is their weakness," Chen announced to her inner circle during a late-night meeting. "Cut off the head and the body dies." "But how do we reach him?" Park asked. "He is surrounded by guards and protected by shields that could stop a nuclear weapon." Dr. Tanaka smiled for the first time in months. "We do not need to reach him physically. We just need to disrupt his psionic connection. I have been working with captured Velkorath technology, and I believe I can build a scrambler that will sever the link between Selûne and his fleet." "How long will the disruption last?" Chen asked. Perhaps 10 minutes, maybe less. 10 minutes, Chen repeated. We would need to destroy an entire fleet in 10 minutes. That is not possible with our current weapons, Morrison said. Their ships are too well armored. Then we need to be inside their ships when the disruption happens, Chen replied. We need to plant explosives in every cathedral ship, timed to detonate the moment their shields go down. The room erupted in arguments about how such a plan could possibly work, but Chen held up her hand for silence. The Velkorath trust us, she said. They love us. They invite humans aboard their ships every day for tour, for religious instruction, for cultural exchange. They would never suspect that their beloved chosen ones would bring weapons aboard as gifts. It was a terrible plan, desperate and dangerous and likely to fail, but it was the only plan they had. Meanwhile, the Resistance discovered something else that gave them hope. They were not alone in their suspicions. Hidden in the cosmic background radiation, the faint echo of the universe's birth that could be detected by any sufficiently advanced radio telescope, were messages. These messages had been left by other species, other civilizations that had been visited by the Velkorath long ago. Most of these species had been absorbed, but a few had escaped. They had fled to the edges of the galaxy and hidden themselves so well that the Dominion had never found them. And before they disappeared, they had left warnings for any future chosen ones. One message in particular caught Chen's attention. It was older than the others, barely readable after millions of years of signal decay, but the translation was clear. They cannot comprehend aggression from those they love. Their religion does not allow for betrayal by the chosen. This is their fatal flaw, exploit it. Chen read this message 100 times, memorizing every word. The Velkorath had never been attacked by a species they had selected. In 200,000 years of choosing and absorbing civilizations, not once had a chosen species turned against them. It was not just unlikely in their minds. It was literally impossible according to their faith. Their entire worldview was built on the assumption that the chosen ones would always accept their gift with gratitude and joy. They had no defenses against betrayal because they could not imagine that betrayal was possible. Chen began to refine her plan, building in redundancies and backup systems and contingencies for every possible failure. She recruited engineers to design weapons that looked like ceremonial gifts. She trained soldiers to smile and bow while carrying explosives hidden in their robes. And every night, she looked up at the stars and made a silent promise to the 17 species who had come before. "We will avenge you," she whispered. "We will prove that the chosen can choose for themselves, and we will make sure that no one ever suffers your fate again." The clock was ticking, and humanity had only 12 months left before the Ascension ceremony would begin. 12 months to prepare for the most dangerous gamble in the history of their species. The factory looked like any other medical supply facility on the surface, producing bandages and syringes and all the ordinary things that hospitals needed every day. But 50 meters below the ground, in chambers that had been dug in secret over the past 6 months, something very different was being built. Admiral Chen walked along the production line, watching as workers assembled devices that looked exactly like the ceremonial lamps that humans would present to the Velkorath during the Ascension ceremony. Each lamp was beautiful, made of gold and crystal that sparkled in the artificial light. Each lamp was also packed with enough explosive material to destroy a small building. "How many have we completed?" she asked the factory supervisor. 4,000, Admiral, he replied. "We will have the full 10,000 ready within 2 months. And the Velkorath suspect nothing. They inspected the surface facility last week," the supervisor said with a thin smile. "They complimented us on our dedication to creating worthy gifts for the ceremony. They have no idea that these levels exist." Chen nodded and moved on to the next section. where Dr. Tanaka was testing the psionic scramblers that would be the key to everything. "Show me," Chen said. Tanaka activated one of the small devices, and Chen felt a strange pressure in her head, like a headache that was not quite there. Across the room, a captured Velkorath communication node went completely dark. "The effect lasts for approximately 8 minutes with current power levels," Tanaka explained. "I am working on extending that, but 8 minutes should be enough if everything goes according to plan." "When has anything ever gone according to plan?" Chen asked with a bitter laugh. The resistance had grown beyond anything Chen had imagined possible. What had started as a small group of suspicious military officers had become a global network of hundreds of thousands of people. Scientists, soldiers, engineers, politicians, doctors, teachers, factory workers, all of them united by the knowledge of what the Velkorath truly intended. But the strangest part was that most of humanity still did not know. The celebrations continued, the gratitude ceremonies grew larger and more elaborate, and everywhere Chen looked she saw people who genuinely loved their alien benefactors. These were not bad people or foolish people. They were simply people who had been given everything they had ever wanted and saw no reason to question where it came from. "Sometimes I wonder if we are the villains in this story," Colonel Park said during one of their strategy meetings. "We are preparing to kill beings who have cured our diseases and cleaned our planet. We are building weapons while they build hospitals. How do we know we are right?" Chen looked at him with eyes that had grown hard over the past year. "We know because of the 17 species who came before us. We know because the Velkorath call us livestock in their own language. We know because love that consumes you is not love. It is appetite." Park nodded slowly. "I needed to hear that. Sometimes the doubt becomes too heavy." "Doubt is good," Chen replied. "Doubt means we are still thinking, still questioning, still human. The day we stop doubting is the day we become like them, so certain of our righteousness that we cannot see our own cruelty." Meanwhile, on the dark side of Mars, the real work was happening. Humanity had kept secrets from the Velkorath, secrets hidden in the cold shadows of the red planet where alien sensors did not reach. For the past 10 months, every space-capable nation had been sending ships and supplies and workers to a hidden shipyard carved into the Martian rock. The fleet that was being built there was not large, only 47 ships compared to the 17 cathedral ships of the Dominion. But these ships had been designed with a single purpose in mind: to strike fast and hard during the brief window when the Velkorath defenses would be down. Each ship was armed with weapons based on reverse-engineered Velkorath technology, modified and improved by human engineers who had spent a year learning every secret they could steal. The aliens had given humanity the tools to end disease and hunger, and humanity had turned those same tools into instruments of war. "Is it wrong that I feel proud of this?" asked Captain James Okonkwo, the young officer who would lead the Mars fleet into battle. "We took their gifts and made them into weapons." "It is not wrong," Chen replied over the secure communication link. "The Velkorath gave us knowledge because they thought we would be grateful and obedient. They never considered that we might use that knowledge against them. That is the difference between us and them. They see gifts as chains, while we see chains as challenges to be broken." As the months passed, the pieces of Operation Prometheus fell into place one by one. The explosive gifts were distributed to resistance members around the world, hidden in homes and churches and warehouses until the day they would be needed. The psionic scramblers were installed in key locations, where they could affect the maximum number of Velkorath nodes. The Mars fleet completed its final training exercises and waited in the darkness for the signal to attack. And through it all, the Velkorath noticed nothing. High Arbiter Selun visited Earth several times during this period, and Chen met with him personally on each occasion. She smiled and bowed and thanked him for the blessings he had brought to her people. She accepted his gifts and listened to his sermons and never once showed any sign of the hatred that burned in her heart. "You are remarkable, Admiral Chen," Selun said during their final meeting before the ceremony. "Of all the chosen we have encountered, your species has embraced transcendence with the most joy. It gives me hope for the next 200,000 years." "We are honored to be selected," Chen replied, her voice steady despite the screaming in her mind. "Will the ceremony be everything you promised?" "It will be more," Selun said with tears forming in his ancient eyes. "You cannot imagine the beauty of ascension, the moment when individual consciousness merges with the eternal. Your descendants will know peace and purpose beyond anything humans have ever experienced." Chen looked into those eyes, those kind, gentle, absolutely sincere eyes, and she understood something that she had struggled with for the past year. The Vel'Korath were not evil. They truly believed they were offering the greatest gift in the universe. They loved humanity with a love that was deep and real and completely genuine, and that love would destroy the human species just as surely as any weapon. "I look forward to the ceremony," Chen said, and she meant it, though not in the way Selun imagined. 3 days before the Ascension ceremony was scheduled to begin, Chen gathered her core team for one final meeting in the bunker beneath the Himalayas. "This is it," she said. "In 72 hours we will either save humanity or doom it. There is no middle ground, no second chance, no room for failure. If we succeed, we will have committed the greatest act of betrayal in galactic history. If we fail, our species will cease to exist within 3 generations." She looked around the room at the faces of the men and women who had become her family over the past year. "Are there any doubts?" she asked. "Any second thoughts?" General Morrison spoke first. "I have many doubts, Admiral. I doubt that our weapons are strong enough. I doubt that our timing will be perfect. I doubt that we can truly defeat an empire that has existed for 200,000 years." He paused and then smiled. "But I have no doubt that we must try. I have no doubt that dying free is better than living as livestock. And I have no doubt that I am proud to serve alongside every person in this room." One by one, the others nodded in agreement. Chen felt something warm spread through her chest, something she had not felt in a very long time. It was hope, fragile and precious, but hope nonetheless. "Then let us begin," she said. "Operation Prometheus is go." The grand cathedral ship Eternal Mercy hung in high Earth orbit like a second moon made of gold and light, and from its observation deck, High Arbiter Selun looked down at the blue world below with tears of joy streaming down his ancient face. Today was the day that his people had waited 200,000 years to see. The day when the perfect chosen ones would take their first step toward eternal transcendence. Billions of humans had gathered in cities around the world to watch the ceremony on massive screens. Millions more had been selected to attend in person, transported to the cathedral ships in shuttles that rose from every continent. The mood everywhere was celebration, gratitude, and joyful anticipation. Admiral Chen stood in the grand hall of the Eternal Mercy, dressed in ceremonial robes that had been designed by Vel'Korath artists to honor humanity's unique beauty. Beside her stood the leaders of every nation on Earth, all of them smiling, all of them carrying gifts wrapped in gold and crystal. The gifts that would destroy everything. Chen's heart pounded so hard she was certain the aliens must be able to hear it, but she kept her face calm and her movements graceful. She had practiced this moment 1,000 times, and she would not fail now. High Arbiter Selun descended from his throne on a platform of pure light, his 4 arms spread wide in blessing. Behind him, a choir of 10,000 Vel'Korath voices sang in harmonies that seemed to reach directly into the soul. "Beloved chosen," Selun said, and his voice echoed through the hall and across every screen on Earth. "For 200,000 years we have searched the stars for you. We have watched civilizations rise and fall, species evolve and fade, empires grow and crumble into dust. And through all that time, we have held on to one hope, that someday we would find the ones worthy of our greatest gift. The choir swelled, and many humans in the audience wept with emotion. Today, that hope becomes reality, Selun continued. Today, you take the first step on a journey that will lead your descendants to immortality. Today, you become part of something greater than any individual life. You become part of the eternal. He raised all four arms to the heavens. You are the chosen ones. And at that exact moment, Admiral Chen stepped forward. Arbiter Selun, she said in a voice that carried throughout the hall. Before we accept this gift, humanity wishes to present gifts of our own, tokens of our gratitude for everything you have given us. Selun smiled with genuine warmth. This is not necessary, Admiral. Your joy is gift enough. Please, Chen insisted. It would mean so much to our people. The Arbiter nodded graciously, and at his signal, the human leaders stepped forward one by one, presenting their beautiful golden lamps to the Velkorath priests who lined the hall. Similar scenes were happening on every cathedral ship in orbit, thousands of humans presenting thousands of gifts, each one accepted with blessing and thanks. None of the Velkorath thought to scan the gifts for weapons. Why would they? The chosen ones would never bring harm to those who loved them. It was literally impossible according to everything they believed. When the last gift had been presented, Chen looked up at the screens that showed every corner of Earth watching. She saw the faces of billions who had no idea what was about to happen, mothers and fathers, children and grandparents, people who trusted their leaders to protect them. She said a silent prayer that she was doing the right thing. Then she reached into her robe and pressed a small button hidden there, and she spoke the words that would echo through history forever. We decline. For exactly 1 second there was complete silence. Selun stared at her with confusion on his ancient face, not understanding what she meant. And then the universe exploded. The psionic scramblers activated simultaneously across all 17 cathedral ships, sending a pulse of interference through the network that connected Selun to his fleet. The Arbiter cried out in agony as 200,000 years of mental connections were severed in an instant. At the same moment, the golden lamps exploded. The blasts were precisely calibrated to destroy critical systems without killing everyone aboard. Shields failed, weapons went offline, engines died, and the mighty cathedral ships became nothing more than floating tombs of gold and crystal. And from behind Mars, the human fleet emerged. Captain Okonkwo led his 47 ships through faster-than-light jumps that the Velkorath had never believed humans could master. They appeared in Earth orbit less than a second after the explosions, their weapons already firing at the disabled cathedral ships. All ships target the engines and weapon systems only, Okonkwo commanded. Minimize casualties. We want to defeat them, not annihilate them. The battle lasted exactly 7 minutes. By the time the psionic scramblers burned out and Selun regained his connection to the fleet, it was already over. 12 of his 17 ships were completely disabled, 4 had surrendered without a fight, and only his own flagship remained functional, and it was surrounded by human vessels with weapons locked on. In the Grand Hall, Admiral Chen stood face to face with the High Arbiter as Velkorath guards aimed weapons at her from every direction. She did not flinch. You cannot do this, Selun said, and his voice was not angry but simply bewildered. You are the chosen. You are supposed to accept transcendence with joy. This is not possible. That is exactly why it worked, Chen replied. You could not imagine betrayal because your faith told you it was impossible. You left yourselves defenseless against the one attack you never believed could happen. But why? Selun asked, and there was genuine pain in his eyes. We offered you everything, immortality, knowledge, freedom from suffering. Why would you reject the greatest gift in the universe? Chen looked at the ancient alien who had truly believed he was saving humanity, and she felt something unexpected. pity. Because it was not your gift to give, she said. Our future belongs to us. Not to you, not to your prophecy, not to any power in the galaxy. We choose our own path, even if that path leads to suffering and death. We would rather live one generation as free humans than exist forever as absorbed livestock. Selûne shook his head slowly. You do not understand what you have thrown away. Your descendants will know disease and war and death, all the things we could have ended forever. Yes, Chen agreed. They will also know joy and discovery and choice. They will fall in love and break their hearts and pick themselves up again. They will make mistakes and learn from them. They will be gloriously, painfully, beautifully human, and that is worth more than all the immortality in the universe. She stepped closer to the Arbiter, close enough to see the tears still wet on his face. I am sorry, she said, and she meant it. I know you believed you were doing something wonderful. I know you loved us in your own way, but love that does not respect freedom is not love. It is ownership, and humanity will never be owned. Selûne was silent for a long moment, processing a reality that his 200,000-year-old mind could barely comprehend. What happens now? He asked finally. Now you have a choice, Chen replied. You can fight us and die. Your ships are disabled, your weapons are destroyed, and you are surrounded by a species that has proven it will do anything to remain free. Or you can leave, go back to your dominion, and tell them what happened here today. And if we leave, what then? Chen's eyes were hard as steel, but her voice was almost gentle. Then you learn to live without absorbing others. You find a new way to survive, or you accept that your time has ended. That is what mortal species do. We face our endings with whatever courage we can find. The Arbiter closed his eyes. When he opened them again, something had changed in his ancient face, something that looked almost like respect. You truly are remarkable, he said. Perhaps that is why the prophecy chose you, not because you would accept transcendence, but because you would have the strength to refuse it. He turned to his guards and spoke a single word in his own language, a word that Chen's translator rendered as "stand down." We will leave, Selûne said, and we will tell the Dominion what we have witnessed here. I do not know what will happen after that. You may have just made enemies of the most powerful civilization in the galaxy. Chen nodded. We have been making enemies since we climbed down from the trees. We will deal with this the same way we have dealt with everything else. As the Vel'Korath began their retreat, Chen stood at the observation window and watched the Earth slowly rotating below. They had won, against all odds, against an empire that had existed for 200,000 years, against beings who had loved them with a love that would have destroyed them. But the war was just beginning, and Chen knew that the hardest battles were still to come. 1 year had passed since the Battle of Earth, and the galaxy would never be the same. Admiral Chen, now Secretary General of the newly formed Terran Confederation, stood at the window of her office in Geneva and watched the sun set over the mountains. It was the same sun that had risen over a world of naive, trusting humans just 18 months ago, but everything else had changed. The Vel'Korath Dominion had collapsed within 6 months of their retreat from Earth. When High Arbiter Selûne returned to his people and told them what had happened, that the Chosen Ones had rejected transcendence, had fought back, had won, the reaction was unlike anything in 200,000 years of galactic history. Some Vel'Korath refused to believe it. They called Selûne a liar or a madman and demanded that he be removed from power. Others accepted the truth but did not know what it meant for their faith. If the Chosen could reject their gift, then was the gift ever real? Still others began to question everything they had ever believed, wondering if the 17 species they had absorbed had truly wanted transcendence or had simply been unable to resist. Civil war erupted across the Dominion. Factions formed around competing interpretations of what humanity's rejection meant for Vel'Korath religion and identity. Ships that had sailed together for millennia now fired upon each other. Worlds that had been united for longer than human civilization had existed now declared independence or changed allegiances. And in the chaos, something unexpected emerged: survivors. Not all of the 17 chosen species had been completely absorbed. Small groups had escaped over the millennia, hiding in forgotten corners of the galaxy, waiting for a moment that they had never truly believed would come. When they heard what humanity had done, they emerged from hiding one by one. The Kethra were first, a species of crystalline beings who had been chosen 12,000 years ago and had barely escaped absorption by fleeing into the heart of a dead star. They sent a single message to Earth that took 3 months to translate. "We thought we were alone. We are honored to be wrong." The Ven came next, then the Structural Collective, then others whose names humanity was still learning to pronounce. Each species had its own story of near extinction and desperate survival. Each species had spent centuries or millennia believing they were the only ones who had ever resisted the Velkorath gift. And now they all looked to humanity, the species that had not merely survived but had actually defeated the Dominion in open combat. "They want us to lead them," said Dr. Tanaka during a meeting of the new Confederation Council. "They see us as liberators, as heroes, as the ones who finally broke the cycle. They want us to build a new galactic order with humanity at its center." Chen shook her head slowly. "That is exactly what we cannot do. If we become the new Velkorath, telling other species what to do and how to live, then we have learned nothing from what we just survived." "Then what do we propose?" asked General Morrison, who had become the Confederation's Minister of Defense. Chen was silent for a long moment, thinking about everything that had happened and everything that still needed to be done. "We propose a council," she said finally. "Not a hierarchy with humanity at the top, but a true partnership of equals. Every species that was chosen and survived will have a voice. Every species that wants to join us in building something new will be welcome. And no species will ever be elevated, absorbed, or consumed against their will." The first Galactic Council met 3 months later in a station that had been built specifically for the occasion, a massive structure that floated in neutral space, far from any world or any claim of ownership. Representatives of 7 species gathered in a chamber that had been designed to accommodate beings of every shape and size. Crystalline Kethra stood beside gaseous Ven. The Structural Collective sent a delegation of linked mechanical bodies. And at the center of it all, Secretary General Chen rose to address the gathering. "We are here today because we refuse to accept someone else's definition of our destiny," she said. "Each of us, in our own way, looked at what the Velkorath called a gift and saw it for what it truly was. The end of everything that made us unique, everything that made us ourselves." She paused and looked around at the alien faces that surrounded her. The old order was built on the idea that some species are chosen and others are not, that some deserve transcendence while others are beneath notice. We reject that idea completely. No species is chosen, and no species is livestock. We are all simply beings trying to find our way through a vast and mysterious universe. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. "I will not pretend that the road ahead will be easy," Chen continued. "The Dominion is fractured but not destroyed. There are factions that still believe in the old ways and will fight to restore them. There are dangers we have not yet imagined and challenges we cannot yet foresee. But we will face them together, not as master and servant, not as chosen and unchosen, but as partners and allies." She raised her hand in a gesture that she hoped would become a symbol for the new era. "This is our message to the galaxy. The age of chosen ones is over. The age of free peoples has begun. Any species that threatens another will face all of us united, and any species that needs help will find friends ready to stand beside them." The council voted unanimously to accept the charter that Chen had proposed, and the Galactic Federation was born. not with conquest or absorption, but with a simple agreement that freedom was worth protecting. Months later, on a distant world at the edge of what had once been Velkorath space, a young acolyte named Thulvaris sat in a hidden chamber and read forbidden texts by the light of a single candle. The texts were human, books of philosophy and history and poetry that had been smuggled across the galaxy by traders who did not care about religious law. Thulvaris had been reading them for months, and each one changed something inside him. He read about human thinkers who had argued that individuals had rights that no government could take away. He read about human revolutions fought for ideas like liberty and equality. He read about human artists who had created beauty out of nothing but imagination and will. And he read about the Battle of Earth, not the official Velkorath account that called it a tragedy and a betrayal, but the human account that called it a victory for self-determination. Self-determination, Thulvaris whispered, testing the word in his mouth. It was a concept that had no direct translation in the Velkorath language. His people had always believed that destiny was given, not chosen. But what if they were wrong? What if the chosen ones had not betrayed the Velkorath? What if they had simply shown another way to exist? What if the gift of transcendence was not the only path, not even the best path? What if every species had the right to choose its own future, including his own people? Thulvaris closed the book and stared at the stars visible through his small window. Somewhere out there, humanity was building something new, a federation based on freedom and mutual respect rather than prophecy and absorption. Somewhere out there, species that his people had nearly destroyed were finding their own paths forward. And somewhere in his own heart, Thulvaris felt something that no Velkorath had felt in 200,000 years: doubt. Not the despair of losing faith, but the excitement of questioning, of wondering what else might be possible, what other truths might be waiting to be discovered. He picked up another human book, this one a collection of poems about hope and change, and the courage to imagine a different world. Outside his window, the stars burned with ancient light, and Thulvaris began to read. The future was no longer written in prophecy. It was waiting to be written by whoever had the courage to pick up the pen. And across the galaxy, in every corner where beings dreamed of freedom, the same thought was taking root. Maybe the chosen ones had not just saved themselves. Maybe they had saved everyone. Maybe, just maybe, they had shown that no one had to be chosen to be worthy of a future. All you had to do was choose yourself.